podcast time, and believe it or not, we're already midway through the second month of 2014. You know, I love it when things just fly by. It means that I'm busy, I'm productive, and I've got a lot to do. How about you guys? Let's get right into it. I want to talk today a little bit about existing cabling. In other words, cables that are already in the wall when you get in the house, or cables that claim to be DirecTV ready, whether or not they are. You know, you can see these in businesses, you can see them mostly in homes, and it's nice to see now that since the housing market is picking up enough, we're starting to see new home construction being done and RG6 cables being strung as sort of part of the deal. Unfortunately, more often than not, your DirecTV installer is going to want to run new cable all of his own because he doesn't trust what's inside the walls, which means that you're going to have the cable outside the wall even though you didn't want it, or you're going to pay to have all that cable taken out while new cable is fished through. It doesn't exactly sound like a win-win, and I'd like to explain why DirecTV installers do it. Well, sure, a lot of it comes down to trust. You just can't trust that some guy who's used to putting in plumbing knows how to put in RG6 cable. That's obvious. But also, there's a really big difference between the kind of cable that DirecTV uses and the kind that Comcast or one of the other cable companies use. Sure, there's a lot of overlap, but Comcast and other cable company signals are a lot stronger than satellite signals. Well, of course they are. They come from 10, 15 miles away at most, where DirecTV signals come from 22,000 miles away. So naturally, DirecTV signals are going to be a lot weaker and require a lot better cable in order to make it work. Cable company cables also usually don't carry the burden of needing to power anything. In other words, there's no electricity running down the line other than that very small amount that's used for the signal itself. DirecTV actually powers its dishes and multi-switches through the coaxial cable, and so they need a kind of cable with a solid copper center conductor so that you can actually do that. If the solid copper center conductor isn't present, then you just can't power your dish. And that means that even if it works perfectly when the installer leaves, it's going to fail sooner or later. Now, maybe you're lucky and you're actually having your home built from scratch and you can inspect what the cable looks like before they put on the drywall. It's a good idea if you can't have your DirecTV installer actually do the work, then you should at least inspect the cable before they put on the drywall to see that everything meets DirecTV standards. We can help you specify a kind of cable for the contractor to use. Whether or not they use it is up to them. Now, if you're really well off, and I know a few people who are, the best thing to do is instead of having a contractor who's normally engaged in putting in your sink do all your satellite cable wiring, have them wire 2-inch PVC pipe through the walls so that it's very easy to fish those cables down. You know, it's not that hard to do, and the cost of the PVC pipe is a lot less than the cable, and a smart contractor will be willing to do this for you. Unfortunately, I've never exactly met a smart contractor. Now here's the next question. What if you're buying an existing house that already looks like it's had DirecTV service in it? Is it then safe to use the cables that are in the wall? And the answer is a very solid maybe. Just because you see a dish on the roof doesn't necessarily mean that all the cables in the wall actually work. This is especially true if it's an older DirecTV dish. It may work with the older systems but not with newer ones. Or it just may be that the cable became neglected, that vermin got to it, that bugs got to it, and you just can't be sure. The best thing to do in that case is at least start with an inspection of the cables that you can see. Look at the connectors, see how clean they are, how free of corrosion they are, and start from there. Even so, it's not a bad idea, and it won't really impact the cost of your install that much to have new cables fished through. If there are existing cables fished through the wall, it's not that expensive to get it done. It does take some time, and yes, it does cost some money, but it oftentimes is the best choice. One thing you should always avoid is using in-wall cables if you buy a foreclosure. If you're buying a house that's foreclosed upon, you don't know the condition that it was in when people left and how quickly they had to leave, how angry they were when they left. It's just not safe. Again, if anything, those existing cables should be used to fish new cables through the wall. Okay, here's where I pay the bills. The Solid Signal podcast is sponsored by SolidSignal.com, and SolidSignal.com maintains a network of installers all across the country. If you don't want to do it yourself, give us a call and we can send an installer out who will do things your way. We're not just talking about the DirecTV way, we're talking about better. We're talking about making sure and using the follow through necessary to get the job done the way that you want it. That's right, SolidSignal.com is not just a DIY website. We can provide full professional level services, whether it's home or office, small spaces to larger spaces. Okay, there's the commercial. And with that, I'll say goodbye again for another week. I hope to see you next week with another brand new episode of the Solid Signal podcast. And have a great one.